Good afternoon. I want to thank everybody who joined us in Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform. We continue our operation. Today is exactly 9 months of the beginning of the full-scale Russian aggression in our land, and 9 months our people fight for our freedom. Right now we will be talking about the situation in the Kherson region. Joining us online is Serhii Khlan, Deputy of the Kherson Regional Council. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Kherson is Ukraine. Glory to the heroes. Mr. Serhii, we know that Kherson is currently under permanent bombardment by the enemy. How did the last day pass? The situation is extremely complicated. The occupier intensifies the bombardments of Kherson, and yesterday and today they continue shelling the city with the cannon artillery. In the morning there was a powerful strike which resulted in destruction of residential buildings in one of the most densely populated areas of the city. It's a district of Tavrichesky. There was large-scale destruction, and we understand that it's not very close to the bank of Dnipro River. It's the northern part of the city, and this is exactly where the enemy targeted with the MLRS, and a lot of ambulances are directed in that area. The rescue personnel is working at the site. The occupier continues the shelling of the residential areas and the most densely populated district of the city. We will see the number of casualties a little bit later, but what we can observe is that the intensity of the strikes increases, both with the use of MLRS and cannon artillery. Yesterday there was a little boy who died while driving in a car. Actually, he died in the hospital as a result of the strike. Regular people, civilians die. The people who stay at their homes. Russia is a terrorist state, and they prove it on a daily basis. Mr. Serhii, what can you tell us about these strikes in Kiev? We see the situation. We were discussing the situation with the shelling of the residential area in Kiev, and the experts said there were no facilities which could pose interest to the occupiers. So is the situation the same in the Kherson region? So it's an intentional elimination of Ukrainian population. Yes, indeed. If we talk about Tavrichesky district, there were no military installations anywhere close. It's the most densely populated district of Kherson city. There are no military facilities, and the fact that the occupiers shell this district and other districts like Ostriv, which is in fact right on the bank of the Dnipro River, unlike that, Tavrichesky is the northern part of the city, nearby the exit to the Mykolaiv region. It's on the road to Mykolaiv, so all across the city, I cannot put it in other words, though it was intentional strike on the civilians, on the civil population. The occupiers have their revenge against the population of Kherson for their joy of liberation by the armed forces of Ukraine. So this is how they terrorize the civil population of Kherson, and the humanitarian and infrastructure situations are still complicated because as the occupiers were leaving, they blew up all the critical infrastructure, and until now Kherson is without power, without heat, without water. All these issues are being sorted out gradually. Even in the conditions of incomplete supply, there are long lines for logs, for humanitarian aid, for fuel, but now all the Ukraine focused their efforts on helping Kherson and Kherson region due to the critical situation Kherson found itself in, and it will take time to rectify the situation actually, but the occupier keeps shelling the residential areas, the civilians buildings, private buildings, and our citizens. Recently a picture from Kherson region was shown in all the publics where the people charge their telephones and who get heated at the railway station. What's the humanitarian situation? Did you manage to launch internet, television, mobile communication, cell networks? What was made for the time being? The situation is complicated with internet. Only in separate sites where Starlink terminals operate there is internet. As to the cell networks, the communication is being reestablished in different districts of the city, and you can communicate via telephone with the citizens of Kherson. As to the power, the situation is still complicated. The situation with charging stations, the State Emergency Service deployed the resilience stations where the citizens can charge their mobile phones and get humanitarian aid. There are stations deployed all over Kherson, and charity organizations get involved in this work. We know that Sprava Hromad jointly organized this kind of help to increase the number of heating stations and recharging stations, and stations where people can get humanitarian aid, where people can again charge their phones, get heated, get connected to the phone, to the cell networks. We should deploy more of such stations, and we call all the charity organizations to help in this way to the inhabitants of Kherson, because we need to understand that we're entering the winter season. It will be cold. The heat supply will be reestablished only after the reestablishing of power supply, and it will take time. We were assured by Oblenergo that in a week there will be power supply reestablished, but to reconnect the whole city it will take some lengthy periods. The situation is complicated, and Kherson still needs help. What's the situation with water supply? How is this issue sorted out? There is no water supply in Kherson. It's only arranged in the railway station where power supply is reestablished, but all across the city the water supply is still absent. It will only be resumed after the reconnection to the power grid. Did you arrange any delivery of potable water to the densely populated areas, to some significant areas, districts of Kherson? Yes, there is a delivery of water as per the schedule, both technical and potable water. These schedules are posted on the site on the website of military administration, and the charity organizations deliver the potable water all across the humanitarian aid stations deployed all across the city, not only in Svobody Square, but across all the districts of Kherson. And we need to provide the people with access to potable water close to their homes, and to technical water as well, because we understand that it's difficult to carry water across the city. And in view of the fact that currently there are 80,000 people in Kherson, we need to provide this aid to the people to the maximum extent possible. Mr. Serhii, what's the situation with evacuation in the city of Kherson and Kherson region in general? Currently, there is a voluntary evacuation organized for those who wish to leave the city, to leave for the safer areas of our country. The information is posted on the website of the military administration and Ministry for Reintegration, and the applications are being submitted by those who wish to evacuate. Unfortunately, I don't know if there are already any first groups who start to evacuate, because there was no communication lately within the last 12 hours. So as of today, I don't have any information about any evacuation routes established for the time being. That there is information that some people leave the city. I know the people who leave due to the critical humanitarian situation, who start living Kherson for other safer cities of Ukraine. I'm talking about the people who have such option, and those who don't have, who cannot live by themselves. They submit the applications to participate in the evacuation as in the routes established by the Ministry of Reintegration. The situation in the left bank of Kherson region, which is under temporary occupation, was the situation there. In our opinion, the situation is calm there, or is it a subjective opinion? The occupiers tried to forcibly evict the people in the area of 15 kilometers to the bank of the Dnieper River. The occupiers intimidate people with some special permits for those who stay in their homes in the villages and towns along the left bank of Dnipro. The occupiers evacuated their occupier administrations in Skadovsk and Henichesk. The administrations which were located in Holopristan, Kakhovka, and Nova Kakhovka, they were relocated to Henichesk, and where the occupier administration is located in Holopristan in Oleshka, they moved their administrations to Skadovsk. So they evacuated their administrations, and the number of the military personnel along the left bank of Dnipro decreased significantly, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they disappeared completely. There are observation posts in the distance of 15 to 20 kilometers from the bank of Dnipro. And in case of signals from these observation posts, there is reinforcement coming from the depth of the left bank of Kherson region. So the concentration of the Russian forces is more in the depth of the Kherson region. They keep their reserves near Henichesk and Arabatska Spit, where they arranged all the sanatoriums as military bases, and there is information that they even started building a helicopter airfield over there after the destruction of such helicopter airfield in Chaplinka by Ukrainian armed forces. So in fact, Arabatska Spit is currently a militarized zone where the newly mobilized occupiers keep coming to, and after that they are being sent closer to the front lines. So actually Arabatska Spit turned into militarized zones by the Russians. Mr. Serhii, we have questions in our studio. Thank you. Olga Panasenko, Ukrinform. Could you please tell us as to the shellings of Kherson from the left bank? Ukrainian army cannot respond properly and to destroy the launch sites due to the lack of ammunition, or because the occupiers outfit their positions somewhere in the middle of civil residential areas. our armed forces keep inflicting damage on the occupiers. Specifically, they damage the stationary S-300 systems. Wherever they are being located, the occupiers mostly shell the city with MLRS and cannon artillery. Both cannon artillery and MLRS are mobile, so they deploy and immediately withdraw from the launch site, and it's difficult to identify the launch sites. And the air defense systems cannot work properly. They cannot work against the cannon artillery because the time between the launch and delivery of the shell is very short, and the same situation is with Grad MLRS. So in view of the short distance, the air defense systems are not being activated, and the mobility of the enemy forces also contributes to the fact that our armed forces cannot identify their locations, and this is what the armed forces report to us. Any more questions?
Майкл Васюра, журнал Newsweek, США. Это вопрос.
Michael Short, Newsweek. Do the journalists need any special permits to come to Kherson and stay there for a couple of days, or we can just use the train to arrive there and stay in the city? The train arrives to Kherson every other day, and for what I know, there is no sale of tickets for this train, so the tickets which were sold during the preliminary United sale it was a charity promotion action, and all the proceeds were forwarded to the armed forces of Ukraine, so that there is currently no permanent railway connection with Kherson. So it's better, if we talk about the journalist, to get accreditation and use the automobile transport to arrive to Kherson and to leave with automobile transport respectively. So in terms of security, if you intend to stay in the city of Kherson, you can do it. However, you have to understand that you're putting yourself under risk of shelling by staying in the very city of Kherson, and the utility situation, the humanitarian situation is difficult too. Mr. Serhii, thank you for joining us. Dear colleagues, I will remind you we had Serhii Khlan joining us online, the People's Deputy of Kherson Regional Council. Our next briefing is at 12:30. Joining us will be Maria Mezentseva, the member of parliamentary delegation in the Parliamentary Assembly of Council of Europe, and we will discuss the resolution of European Parliament on the recognition of Russian Federation as the terrorist sponsor state. Let's believe in our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.